In just under 2 weeks' time, Australia's Paralympians will be given their chance to shine, competing against the world's best for gold. Physiotherapist Craig Botcher is just one of the many people who have volunteered their time to help keep the Paralympians in their best form.
They have to pay attention to a few of the special needs of disabled athletes, looking at pressure areas if they're wheelchair athletes, caring for stumps, for the amputees. Those types of things are really the only difference between looking after the disabled and the able-bodied athletes.
Craig will live in the athletes' village for the duration of the Games, ready to help any athlete on the Australian team. His primary concern, though, will be the intellectually disabled men's basketball team, with whom he's worked with for more than 2 years.
Being intellectually disabled, it's not just about hands-on work, it's about learning how to deal with them, how to get messages across, how to get them to do what you want them to do, exercise-wise and everything else. But yeah, it's a very, very close group.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. Iron deficiency is one of the most common causes of fatigue in women. Now researchers at Newcastle University are trying to find out what causes low iron levels and how the body absorbs the nutrient from food.
I'm doing a detailed measure of dietary intake. It goes over about 12 days. That's a weighed record. I'm doing a blood test to test iron status, obviously, and we're also doing a measure of menstrual blood loss.
And while it's generally thought that eating more red meat will increase iron levels, not much is known why some women are more prone to this nutritional disorder and become anaemic.
Iron deficiency is actually the most common nutritional deficiency in the world. So it's definitely common in Australia and especially in women. So yes, of course, there needs to be more research.
But before the study can get off the ground, volunteers are needed.
I'm looking for about 100 women this time, and age bracket is 18 to about 50.
It's hoped the results will be known in around 12 months' time. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Hoist that mainsail now. We're going to catch the tide and get up there to the Hunter colony.
200 years ago, Captain William Reid set sail aboard his small timber ship Martha from Sydney to Newcastle to collect a sample of coal. He came into what he thought was the Hunter River, loaded some coal and returned to Sydney.
In fact, he'd found another lagoon, as they called it in those days, and of course that was the beginning of Lake Macquarie's European discovery, and for years after that, Lake Macquarie was known as Reid's Mistake.
This crew is in rehearsal mode. They'll be performing a reenactment of Reid coming ashore this Sunday at Salts Bay near Swansea Heads.
The reenactment itself, it's a mistake, so there's not great records and there's not a lot of research that I went through.
Particularly keen to see lots of school kids there because it's part of their history, and this will bring it to life for them.
Martha will be among a flotilla of ships which will depart from Spears Point at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning and sail down to Swansea.
Yep, that's definitely where we're going. Right, crew, prepare to come about.
The reenactment will take place at 9 a.m, then the ships will return to Spears Point Park, where the celebrations will continue, concluding with a fireworks display at 10 p.m. Catherine Turner, NBN News.
A week ago, the Wallsend Emergency Clinic closed. Now it's opening again, run by new doctors between 6 and 9, Monday to Friday.
We're not able to open yet at weekends because we don't have sufficient doctors, but we are continuing to try and recruit doctors to the service, and when they're available we will be opening weekends as well.
It's an interim arrangement made necessary by the Division of Commonwealth and State funding requirements. According to Professor McGrath, negotiations broke down with the old clinic because funding became unavailable due to a change in services. For now, Hunter Health has agreed to put this limited operation in place while it applies for Commonwealth funding that will utilise a roster of general practitioners like the model already operating in Maitland.
We're optimists. We'd like to think it will be in probably mid next year, but it will need to go through that sort of length of negotiation before we get a final solution.
Although hindered by a calf muscle strain, nothing will stop Ben Melmoth from playing on his real home court tomorrow night. However, the Newcastle-born and bred player does admit to being a little apprehensive about his return.
I am. I'm a little bit nervous. It's been a long time since I've played in front of Newcastle fans, and I think everyone's going to be coming out to watch us play.
The Kings play Wollongong on the Central Coast tonight before heading to Newcastle to highlight the local association's Day of Celebration that will also feature a former Falcons against ex-Illawarra players match.
It's going to be a great opportunity for me to see the guys like Sean Dennis play and Dennis Kibble, and Butch Hayes will be playing, but not for the Newcastle Falcons. He'll be playing for the Wollongong Hawks.
One of the best known and longest running Hill Climb events starts tomorrow at Newcastle's King Edward Park. The 42nd Matara Hill Climb has a full list of entries for both days of competition. Tomorrow will see the best of the local drivers in the Newcastle Challenge, while on Sunday drivers will be vying for vital championship points in the State Hill Climb title. Meanwhile, the State Canoe Kayak Championship will also be decided at the weekend at Lake Glenbourne. Several of Australia's Olympic paddlers will hit the rapids for the slalom-style event.
The Swansea Bridge opens almost every hour on the weekend, and today the water traffic was heavier than usual. A flotilla of boats passed through in celebration of 200 years of European settlement on Lake Macquarie. Belmont's Tony Mowbray leading the way. Next Sunday, Tony will begin his solo round-the-world voyage, but today he was the lake's bicentenary ambassador.
Whenever people ask me where I come from, I don't say Newcastle, I say Lake Macquarie. Always do that, and I just think to be able to go out there and represent our city and make people aware of what we have here and our lifestyle, I'm really proud of that.
Aboard his small timber ship Martha, Captain William Reid sailed from Sydney into the lake entrance, mistakenly believing it was the Hunter River. Today's reenactment of his actions was performed where Reid first set foot on dry land at Salts Bay. The Europeans were met by Aborigines on shore before loading the boat with coal. It was only after Reid returned to Sydney that he realised he hadn't sailed into the Hunter Port at all. A parkland near Salts Bay is now a permanent reminder of Reid's mistake, with the official naming of Reid's Reserve, celebrated in high style.
But I think it's nice to, focus on 200 years of growth, what's happened, of European settlement, and what we've achieved in that time.
And there are plenty who are grateful Reid made his mistake. 180,000 people have now made Lake Macquarie home. Catherine Turner, NBN News. The green half of Australia's green and gold.
It's not often Ironmen from the rival series get to race each other, and given both championships start next month, almost all headed to Queensland's Noosa Beach for the Meikle File Showdown. Hot conditions would have made the water inviting for the swim leg. Josh Blair heading into the surf first, but the choppy swell made for tough going. Blair actually opened a small lead midway through the swim. The field, though, never too far behind. All his hard work, though, brought undone. Stranded out in front on the way back in, the pack caught him in one foul swoop. Dropping back to fifth, heading into the final leg on the board, Blair battled his way into second behind Wollongong's Phil Clayton, and that's how it stayed until the finish. A little closer to home, and the State Koshiki Championships were decided at Raymond Terrace. The event saw fighters from many styles of the martial art world up against each other, but no one could stop Tamworth's Scott Chaffee. He showed off some of the skills that got him a world title, and he didn't take long to add another state championship to his name either. He'll join other division winners at the national titles in Queensland later this year. And Great Britain's Anthony Brown has beaten Australian Olympic slalom kayaker John Wilkie for the state crown at Lake Glenbourne.
Friends and fellow hang gliders returned to the site of the tragedy today, still visibly in shock. Joel Rebecki of Merewether died instantly as he was trying to launch his hang glider in turbulent conditions off Strait Lookout at around 4:30 yesterday afternoon.
Unfortunately, as he was leaving the hill, he just got put into a turn and was unable to recover from that turn.
Onlookers watched on in horror as he was thrown head first into the car park. His prototype glider finally coming to rest against a car that raced in the Matara hill climb just hours earlier.
He was wearing a helmet at the time and unfortunately he suffered massive head injuries, and even the helmet couldn't save him.
Although the 24-year-old had only moved to Newcastle 6 months ago, he was rated as one of the nation's top-ranking hang glider pilots.
He was an extremely experienced pilot and probably would have gone on to become the next world champion.
This is the fourth hang gliding death in the self-regulated industry in just 3 weeks.
I would say that as he launched, he believed that he was capable of taking on the conditions that were present on the hill at the time.
In direct response to this tragedy, Newcastle Council is now considering erecting a windsock at Strait Lookout to assist hang gliders in reading wind directions. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
The state's commercial fishermen have swung into action, planning a mass rally tomorrow morning outside Parliament House in Sydney. Under the new laws, the Fisheries Department will have the power to close down commercial operators in waterways identified as environmentally sensitive, as well as collecting the new $25 saltwater fee from recreational anglers. The industry claims there's a conflict of interest.
That fisheries becomes the provider of services, the researcher, the manager, the assessor of the environment and the auditor. Now, we don't believe that that is a clear and open process and that the government and the people of New South Wales deserves an impartial umpire.
The Minister, Eddie Obeid, is in the hot seat and says the industry will get a fair go.
The issues will be released from the Fisheries Department. They'll go to a roundtable forum which consists of commercial, recreational, nature conservation people.
The Democrats will introduce a private members' bill tomorrow in a bid to block the new laws.
We believe there's going to be a lot of hardship through the commercial industry, particularly rural coastal New South Wales, lots of closures, lots of people unemployed if these proposals go through.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. Fishing boats and trucks were parked in front of State Parliament House today as commercial fishermen vented their concerns.
That what we're seeing now is a degradation of the environment along the coastline, on the land side and also in our oceans, which is ripping apart our fishing stocks. And the government is failing to recognise that.
They say new legislation that will introduce a fee for recreational anglers will lead to a government bias against the commercial industry.
But Eddie Obeid, the Minister, has said that if a professional fisherman catches a fish, it makes much less money for the economy than a recreational fisherman, because the recreational fisherman gets a tinny, pays for his holiday.
90% of people and families that put a line in do not catch a fish. I want to change that.
Meantime, there was a poor turnout to a meeting of the fishing party in Newcastle last night, with only 15 people attending. A local committee was formed to give concerned anglers a voice once the party is officially registered.
But it represents not only those that just like fishing, but anyone who's got an interest in the fishery as a whole. That means every member of the community.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. Last Sunday, Swansea Channel became the focus of the lake's bicentenary celebrations, attracting pleasure craft and visitors to its shores. Today, a campaign focusing on the area was launched, explaining the historic challenge of keeping the channel open.
For about 200 years, the channel has caused heartache for humans. And the idea of the pamphlet that we've just released is to try and increase an awareness or an understanding of the role that the channel plays in lake management.
Jeff Jansen is halfway through implementing a state government 3-year $12 million strategy to improve the quality of the lake. And he says it wouldn't affect the lake's health if the Swansea Channel was allowed to silt up completely.
A lot of people sort of believe that the lake relies solely on the flushing through the channel, and whilst it can have minute impact, it's not really a major player, because the lake only has a 1% tidal exchange.
Meantime, Lake Macquarie Council will review environmental assessments at the Cameron Park industrial site near Wallsend. Earlier reports that koala colonies A koala was injured crossing a road near the estate. Paul Lobb, NBN News. Two races on Lake Illawarra decided the first round of the Flying Ants Championship, with Evan Walker and Lyndon Langdon in their boat Demon taking out both. Wet, Wet, Wet and Get Psyched, also from Toronto, rounded out the top placings. Toronto will host the second round in November. Meantime, the lake's top young sailors will benefit from ongoing sponsorship of their sport. Belmont's 16-foot sailing club has announced it'll continue to fund junior development programs with the Hunter Academy of Sport. Youngsters like state cherub champion Richard Howard are reaping the benefits.
Types of foods we need to eat, the sort of exercises we need to do, the sort of training off the water that needs to be done.
It's also making the sport affordable for many.
With a sport like sailing, where there are so many expenses, with gear, boats, etc., it's so necessary to keep those costs within reasonable bounds.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's a Newcastle icon, but soon Nobby's signal station's days of providing vital information to ships' captains and the public alike could be over.
The major recommendation was the closure of the signal station and the implementation of a new vessel traffic information centre to be moved to Dyke Point.
From the lighthouse, the signal station controls movements to and from the port, while the Operation Coordination Centre looks after ships once they're in the harbour. The Maritime Union represents the workers at Nobby's. 3 are likely to miss out on jobs when the two bodies merge, but there are other concerns.
We have some concerns about the lack of any visual contact with vessels at anchor and at sea. That would be a real problem for us.
The Port Corporation says the existing system risks shipping information falling between the cracks, but denies that it has determined where the new streamlined Vessel Traffic Information Centre will be stationed. It says the 360-degree view from the signal station is a positive in favour of keeping it manned, but the final decision may be determined by the technology chosen for the VTIC.
In those times, it's finding something to do that makes the difference between living and dying, virtually.
The green half of Australia's green and gold was flying high in Newcastle City last night, representing the Paralympics. The torch finally appeared, held in the firm grasp of retired night captain Tony Butterfield. He likened it to the pride he felt whilst wearing the blue and red on the football field.
Well, to see the crowd coming in here and the passion in the face of the kids and the mothers and fathers who came along, and it's just a very special experience for me.
Blustery conditions made it difficult for golf legend Jack Newton this morning. The crowd happy to see him finally go. Jack was the first of many torchbearers selected by the community to carry the flame. By this afternoon, the torch was in Belmont and Swansea. 17-year-old Kai Whedon took the flame, nominated by his peers at Belmont High School. A diving accident left Kai a quadriplegic, but he remains a positive role model for all teenagers. Catherine Turner, NBN News.
And that challenge all. And that problem, I think you're fine, has said goodbye to third place at the moment as the checker comes out. And oh, the Sims cars get together and Dennis over and over. So the merge greets them as they come across turns 3 and 4. But Dave Bryan will take the win. Dave Bryan first. Mark Everly in for second.
The warning signs were up well before Administrator Brian Dunphy was appointed to sort out the Breakers' financial problems. The soccer club had run up debts to around $450,000. Rover Coaches, the largest individual creditor, it's owed $18,800.
Any chance or any confidence you're going to get what you're owed? No, none at all. None at all.
It's a $2 company. I doubt that the Breakers football owns much larger than a pen.
Aaron Lewis is one of 3 creditors who will now assist the administrator to see if they can come up with any proposal in the next 3 weeks to keep the Breakers a going concern. But that'll be difficult given the Breakers Football Club has next to no assets.
I'm always ready, willing to listen to anyone who might come forward with a proposal.
Owner David Hall has won to keep the Breakers up and running while he tries to win the right to have the club back playing soccer.
Well, the Breakers will be back next season, full stop.
Mr Hall is still pursuing legal action to block the new NSL club in Newcastle. That move is of little consolation to creditors.
It has nothing to do with the creditors, but it may in fact impede the process for some time.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Back home, but not for long. Justin Norris was sizing up a new surfboard today ahead of a quiet trip north. A big change to what he's been up to for the past 3 weeks.
I haven't really been keen to see Paul for the last couple of weeks. It's been too busy partying and doing the parades.
The teenager has also been in high demand since winning bronze for the 200-metre butterfly, becoming a hit with the media in the process.
I heard someone describe it as New Year's Eve every day, and that's what it's been like for the odd 3 weeks.
And he only has about as many weeks left before heading back into serious training and the journey towards his next Olympics and hopefully more medals at Greece.
The Olympics was such a great thing in Sydney, and I had such a good time. Who wouldn't want to do it again in Athens in another 4 years?
Justin will also be honoured on Saturday morning with a street parade through Stockton.
They seem to wait for the cricket season and then do it. Whether they like cricket or not, I don't know.
In May 1943, a Catalina similar to this one crashed into Port Stephens during a training mission from the Rathmines base, killing 7 of the 9 crew. 57 years on, the wreckage has been found by the National Underwater Marine Agency, reviving a little-known part of history.
Nobody's ever bothered about it or brought it up. I'd say that 99% of the locals wouldn't even know about it. It's quite interesting to think that it has been located.
Today, guided to the crash site by the Volunteer Coastal Patrol, veteran airmen and their families remembered the dead, including the son and granddaughter of Henry George Lovett, killed at age 30. Ron Lovett paid his respects with a wreath, thankful the wreckage has now been found.
I was only 12 years of age when I lost my father, so I didn't remember a lot about him. And I suppose it was a good feeling, yeah.
Former Catalina commander Sir Richard Kingsland threw a wreath with Karen Lovett by his side.
It's been a pleasure and I feel very humbled. I'm very emotional. As the times got closer, it's become more emotional for me. But I think there's a lot of emotion there for my father as well.
And back on dry land, a plaque will be unveiled tomorrow, remembering the watery deaths of 7 men.
Lest we forget.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.